Hello, my name is Max, and today we want to finish the superstructure of the Mendel90. You're going to need all your pieces of wood, you're going to need your wood screws, and a measurement square if you have one. That's really helpful. And all your fixing blocks. There should be 10 of those. So I hope you mark your sides left and right. That's going to be really helpful going forward. So you see that those fixing blocks have two holes on one side, or in one direction, I should say, and one hole in the other direction. So one might think it's easier to screw the one hole in first, but it's actually not. It's easier to just place a piece of wood like this, and then place the fixing blocks on your surface, and then screw those two screws in. You will see why later on. You have to make sure that they're really flush and even with your with the side of your piece of wood. And overall, you have 3 fixing blocks per side, and you have 4 fixing blocks on your gantry. So just place your piece of wood on a flat surface and screw those fixing blocks in. You should already have those holes drilled. Pause the video right now and continue when you're ready. So this is the back side of the gantry. And now you take your left side. It has those 4 holes for the side fan. That's how you can tell it's the left side. You place it like this. That's where it belongs. It goes right in between those 2 fixing blocks on the gantry. And now we're just going to screw it in place, and that's where you can use your square if you want to. But first, just, screw them in place a little bit. It's easier to do it this way because otherwise you have a huge lever on those pieces of wood, and you can easily break your MDFs this way. So don't forget your washer and star washer. And then just gently screw it in place. It should still be able to move around a little bit because we will make sure this is actually nice and square. All right, so now we can take our square and we can make sure that this is actually, well, square, but it's not super important. It's not super important that those parts are actually square. It doesn't really matter that much because it's just for structural integrity. If they are, like a couple degrees to one side, it doesn't matter at all. But, why not make it square? Might as well, right? Okay, so this is nice and square. So now we just screw it in. And that's basically what you do for both of your side pieces. So you might want to pause the video right now and continue when you screwed all your side pieces to your gantry. Alright, so when you're done, you take your base plate, make sure that the motor faces away from you, and then you can place what you just built right on top of it. Okay, so now you see the reason why you screwed the 2 screws in first. If you would have to screw all those 2 screws in now, you see it's really difficult to reach when you already have the y-axis mounted in place. You see it's really difficult to reach this way. The way we did it, you only have to screw from the top, and that's really easy. So now make sure that you align this properly. Again, it's not super important where exactly it is, but you might lose a couple millimeters or maybe even a centimeter of print area if you don't put it in the right place. So now we just screw in 2 screws, and we screw in those 2 screws that fix the complete structure to that fix the side parts to the base plate. And we don't screw them in all the way. We still want it to be able to move around a little bit. You see that it doesn't actually fit back here. If all your parts are cut perfectly, it should be flush against the base plate. But when you saw sheet material, you always have a couple of millimeters that get lost. And I actually bite the base plate a little bit bigger, so I had a little bit of room to play with. Okay, so we gently screw it in place, and now we actually take our measurement square after I managed all those cables. Let me plug them in. Okay, so now we take our measurement square. And this is actually important. So this has to be square. It has to be a perfect right angle because the z-axis will be mounted here. If it's at an angle, what will happen is that you print at an angle when you want to print straight, and that's really bad. Okay, so you want it to be perfectly straight. So make sure this is actually square, and then screw the screws in place. Don't forget to check the other side too. This is a really important part. This has to be square. Okay, so once you make sure it's actually square, you can just screw the screws in place. 2 screws should be able to hold it all in place. Now is also your last chance to check whether you actually have a right angle. Measure, measure twice or measure 3 times. And this should be a right angle too. And it is. Anyway, once you measure all of that, you are basically done. Just screw in all the remaining screws, and you have your superstructure ready to go.